You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of Inside Automotive, exclusively right here at cbtnews.com and now streaming on Roku and Apple TV. Economic conditions and tech advancements really defined much of what we saw from retail automotive in the past year. Today, Bill Wittenmyer joins us. He's the Chief Sales Officer at DealerOn. I know that's a company that you know well. He's going to, shed some light on some of the major factors that played a pivotal role in 2023 in retail automotive. We also want to talk to him about AI and some of the other trends that he sees out there for 2024. So, Bill, welcome back to the studio.
Thanks.
It's so good to have you.
Great to see you. It's been a while, I feel like.
It's been too long,
I have
actually.
thoughts. I have lots of thoughts.
But you don't say. No, the industry, you're known as Billy the Kid, and you always write great blogs, and people ask you all the time at conventions that you're at, and just, hey, what's Billy thinking on a lot of these issues? And there's a lot to talk about between EVs and AI and so many other things that dealers are challenged with and faced with. So let's start in the beginning and talk to us a little bit about 2023. If somebody said to you, what'd you think of that year? What were some of the trends that came out of it?
Yeah, you mentioned two big ones right out of the gate, of course, AI and EVs. And I'd like to state I was early on the EV kind of being a little bit of a hot air balloon.
You told us.
And and it's recorded. So it's interesting. I was fortunate enough to be in Europe in the fall, and I spoke to the top dealers in both Belgium and in Holland. And I spoke about EVs, and I gave a story. I'll be much briefer here, but I drive across the country twice a year to bring my dogs back and forth from the different houses.
Wow.
Well, I-90 from Seattle to Sioux Falls, South Dakota is 1,500 miles, and it's straight. You could literally fall asleep and wake up, and you're still going.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
I saw 3 EVs on 1,500 miles. And so I told this story to this group of dealers in Europe, and I said, I'm going to tell you something. I said, it's not happening. It's not there. I said, true electric vehicles have a really big hill to climb in the United States. And a great example of that is this road trip. You couldn't find a charging station. There's absolutely no infrastructure. And the 3 that I saw were really around Bozeman, Montana, because it's a major place.
Right.
Other than that, it's just not there. And you would have thought those dealers thought I had a horn growing out of my head because they're a little bit further down the road in terms of their infrastructure.
Sure.
So I think we're going to see the hybrids are going to continue to grow. That has a market. I think the EVs, we've already seen the pullback from the manufacturers.
Yeah.
We've seen the inventories on the lots already increase, even with the tax credits and the government trying to push that agenda. It's really tough.
It is.
We're just not there.
Yeah.
This country is so big, we can't compare it to the Netherlands, and we can't compare it to Belgium. You're up an hour or 2 from each country there. It's a little bit different. So it's going to be interesting to see that long term.
Yeah. They say the average consumer drives a car less than 50 miles a day. Not everybody's driving that 1,500-mile stretch that you are. Is there some validity in the fact that this might be better, AVs might be better suited for in-town traffic, and if you're living in Atlanta
100%.
or outside of New York? Or...
Yeah, I think they call it distance anxiety and going much further than that, because even on a lot of the cars that say, hey, it has a 300-mile range or whatever it is, when you're going at different speeds or different traffic, you could see that drop to half that, into your trip. Yeah. So it's really difficult to plan around that. And it's back to the infrastructure. We just don't have the infrastructure here currently, and it's going to take a long time for us to get there. Again, interestingly enough, in Europe, every rest stop, which is about every 20 miles or so, had charging stations, solar charging stations. Okay. You just don't see that here.
Yeah, we don't get
really
that.
Tough.
Do you think it's a complete infrastructure play right now? If the infrastructure were there today,
I think so. Okay. I think there's enough interest from consumers. I think people have a want to be a part of that. There's a little bit of popularity too, and being a part of that. But it really, once you get it, you find that it's really, really tough to maintain that and sustain it in any way from a longevity standpoint, right? Again, around town, probably can do that. Yeah. But if you're looking at doing any type of travel outside the city, I think that distance anxiety comes back and having to plan around it. And then, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, the freezing temperatures and how that affected charging stations and the battery stuff too. I think there's a lot that we still don't know yet that we've got to kind of wrap our heads around. And I think people feel a lot better with the hybrid model where they can still have that backup of being able to get some fuel if they need it.
And the industry's already challenged with an average sale price of a new car or sticker price at $48,000. It's another $10,000 for the average EV. That is a real concern. I mean, you start getting up in almost to $60,000 for the average price.
Yeah, out of the
EV.
gate.
Yeah,
right. I mean, we haven't even added anything yet, and I think that is another challenge too. And look, I mean, a lot of manufacturers, this isn't a hidden thing, have subsidized themselves. Yeah. And even the government subsidizing with the tax credit. Still, it's a challenge. You don't see it taking off with all of those things input. I think you have to raise a flag. Right.
So, what do you tell the dealers that are out there trying to do their best to sell them? The consumers just aren't coming in asking for them, and those are the vehicles that are now really starting to age on dealers' lots.
Yeah, and again, then you have the trade-in aspect too, and it's like, wow. I think dealer-wise, I've seen some really progressive ones that are putting their own charging stations in. I think that's a big thing. Sometimes it's in order to help put it along, you've got to help put it along. So I think that's an opportunity. Again, I see a lot of dealers that are really pushing the tax credits with consumers, and consumers are buying them just for that. And then that's it. Then they have another vehicle that they've got out there that they can go long term. So I still think there's going to be a lot there that we have to get from the government. And local municipalities is the real tough part, right? I mean, you mentioned Atlanta, really progressive, a lot of things going on here. You can move to a couple other cities that are a little bit further out, and you don't have that advantage. And municipalities are going to be a lot of that driving force. Are they going to have the infrastructure there or not? And I see that as a challenge.
Sure. What were some of the major factors influencing consumer behavior and purchasing decisions, and will we see those in 2024?
Well, I think one, we have inventory. Again, that word seems to have been a really big word for the last 2 or 3 years. The second one is now interest rates. I guess they're both I's, so I'll stay with that theme. But interest rates are, we're looking at 2002, 2000, 1998 type rates where, average new car rates somewhere around 10, 11%. That's pretty stout comparatively to what most people have had historically, where they're used to zeros and twos, and 4.9 was like, oh, well, now you're talking about more than double that. So I think that's influencing consumers a lot too. You've got inventory coming back now, but I'm going to tell you kind of a secret one, and that is what's actually happening inside of the dealerships. I talked to a really large automotive group out of Florida earlier this week, and I was curious as to, hey, what's the actual salespeople? What is that tenure like now? What does that look like? And 80% of this group's salespeople have joined the sales force since or during COVID. Ooh. So you're talking about 8 out of 10 have never seen pre-COVID sales style.
So they don't even know how to sell a car.
Look, I go with Joe Verdi, one of your guests sometimes. I take his theory of if you think it's too high, cut it in half. That's still half of the salespeople out there have no idea what a sales environment is like when you're not taking orders and saying, would you like fries with that car, sir? Because I got 5 other people that want it. I think that's really interesting. The next thing I asked after that was, what about management? I said, if that's the way that is, what about management? Again, about 50% of the managers that they had in the stores are either COVID or post-COVID. So they've never managed a desk or inside the dealership, prior to. I think that's a big challenge, and
that's a huge challenge. No question about it.
Training, how to handle the customer's experience. All these things now also incorporate with, we have inventory, prices are still high, and now I have high interest rates. That's a dangerous combination, in my opinion.
No question about it. And there are a lot of dealers that I speak to around the country, and they have echoed that same sentiment, and that is that my salespeople really need to be put into training, because it is a whole new ball game now, and they're running to the desk every 5 seconds going, what do I do when the customer says this? Oh, the customer wants to know this. What do I do in that situation? And they really got to get these men and women into training on a daily basis. basis. It just has to be ongoing.
Yeah, and that hurts that experience as
Sure.
a consumer. And
Sure.
I can tell you, I just bought a new car a couple of weeks ago, and I got affected by the strike, and it was an order car. It finally came in, and the poor salesperson that I dealt with, I felt sorry for them because they were so in the dark that they were truly just somebody that was running messages back and forth. And I feel like I've got connections, and so that I was sitting back going, wow, what is the average consumer dealing with when we keep talking about, experience at digital retail, and we're going to change and all this, and it feels like we've actually gone a little bit backwards. And I don't like that. I love this business, I love the people in it, and I feel like that's going to be an even bigger challenge.
Sure. So what do you think we're going to see in 2024? What are some of the things that dealers should keep their eye on in the way of trends? Do you think digital retailing, for instance, is something that is here to stay? You know, during COVID, specifically right around in 2020, dealers were getting all prepared and getting all excited, and some said, this is the way of the future, we're never going back, people are going to buy cars online. And as we sit here today, Vroom just a day or so ago said, we're out, we're not in business anymore. So we don't know where that stands. Carvana seems to be on a little bit of a shaky ground as well. What's your take on that whole deal?
It's going to be tough. You mentioned Vroom, Northwest Autosports, 11 stores out of the Northwest. In pre-owned decided to shut their doors back in middle of January based upon same thing. The environment's just too difficult. I'm going to work backwards. I think interest rates is going to play a really big role in where we're at and what we're doing. You still see inventory currently for pre-owned is about 1 million or a third less than the way it was prior. So that's still holding those prices steady. You know, we're not seeing that used car crash yet. You've still got inventory challenges in some sectors on new, so that's a here or there. But I think it's going to be some other stuff. You know, you mentioned digital retail. Never really kind of got all the way there.
No,
you know, and what I mean by that, there really was never a product that really connected all the pieces.
Right.
Heard a lot about people that were doing it or wanted to do it or sold.
And there were some big acquisitions.
Really trying to make
companies that were
100%.
hurrying up, paying crazy money for.
And you thought, they have all the pieces to the puzzle, but somehow they're still missing that one little corner piece, whatever it is, and connecting the dots. So, digital retail is more of a payment shopping piece. I think we've seen that is more of a reality that consumers like to use these tools, but more from a shopping standpoint, of a budget standpoint, a payment standpoint, being in a shop online or remotely that way, and getting a better idea, but not really fully consummating the deal, which they can't anyway.
Right.
I think another big thing you'll see in 2024 with the deprecation of cookies and websites, you're going to need to see real, true personalization. Right. We're going to have to be able to do that without logging in or requiring the consumer to log in. And you've got, I call them upstarts, but there are a couple of new search engines out there, like DuckDuckGo versus Google, that are saying, hey, we're not doing any of that. And you see a lot of the younger generations are doing much more of their search exclusively there.
I have heard that.
So I think dealers are going to have to kind of pivot around that, not only from a digital retail standpoint, but certainly from how their websites are set up and how they look at personalizing that experience for the consumer, so that they can make it that truly unique shopping experience that really hits home.
Okay, are those some of the things that you're working on at DealerOn, is to make that when somebody's on the website?
And that was a big release for us at NADA and what we call Signals, and Signals is our personalization form. Again, it allows you to give that personalized shopping experience and personalized pieces specific to what that consumer is looking for, without requiring them to log in and not requiring external cookies, right? And that could be on or off-site data, which is pretty cool. You can enhance that and what we're calling our Signals with Full Throttle, and that's our Signals Experience Cloud. And that leads into another great announcement that we made at NADA is that we have a strategic alliance with stream companies where we utilize the best of both worlds and using the power of the DealerOn website platform along with streams marketing and really being able to put those two together in a integrated, unique way. So yeah, and look, we're not the only ones. There's other different factors to go out there. I think you just have to do what's next the best. And I feel like we've got some really good stuff there.
But everybody agrees in the industry, and I know you do because you're with DealerOn, that everybody's starting on that dealer's website, right? I mean, obviously with Google and DuckDuckGo and the others, but it really is a digital play. And if dealers' websites are not, at 100% in every single category, which I've been shopping for a car myself, and I find that they're not. Some of them are still kind of cumbersome to get through. Major mistake. It's 2024, folks. What are we doing? Right?
Having come from retail and knowing that we always thought, more is better. Well, more is just more. It's not always better. And an example of that is when you look at some of these call to actions that are on some of these websites. They're just, I know. 15, 20, 30 call to action on a website is just too much, to your point.
That's right.
And I think personalization allows that to kind of center it a little bit more down and really allows you as a dealer to kind of quiet the noise for your consumer, because you're right. It's always mobile.
Right.
It's mobile first.
Oh yeah.
And then you may get desktop. But look, that next generation, they don't even have laptops. Everything is phone. And so you've got to start with mobile first, give that experience, and go from there. There's still websites and dealers' websites out there that are mobile you cannot even click to call or get directions to. It's like,
so that's another thing. We were just talking about the salespeople and the management team in a lot of dealerships that have not yet made the crossover to the real world of selling, because everything that they had in inventory sold. It's sold at sticker price plus. And I think the same thing's happening in the marketing and also in the websites, where they're like, it doesn't matter what, if I had this white piece of paper up on a website, I'm going to sell all my inventory at sticker price. People are going to find their way to my store and they're going to buy the car. So I would imagine that you guys are probably busy right now helping dealers that are freaking out, going, hey, we gotta do something here, because we need to get every deal we can get our hands on.
It's changed, right? It's pivoted, and it's not been this massive. All of a sudden, the floodgates are open. But look, it is getting harder. And the dealers, thankfully, are still having really good months and very profitable. But we know that challenge is coming. It's always a cycle in our business.
That's right.
And so we know that next cycle is going to be the challenge. And to your point, hey, look, before all you had to do is turn the lights on. And not only did you have the car sold, you had 3 people waiting.
That's right.
And so now it's not that much. So we're seeing an increase in that digital advertising. We're seeing that need and that increase in being able to actually go out and target the right consumers and retarget the right consumers. And using some of those integrated platforms together that truly work, that you can then personalize and then market to them with a personalization. The blast of mail and the blast of email and all this, it's still being done a ton, but it's so passe, and people have now grown to the point where they're completely numb of it. You've got to be able to go back to them and have that personalized signature. And to your point, the marketing, it's really critical. And as we go through 2024, I think you'll see that continue to increase, particularly in the second half of the year as those inventory levels continue to flood.
Sure. You mentioned personalization. A company that's done very well with that in retailing is obviously Amazon. What is your take on this Amazon Hyundai
I think it's a neat story.
Okay.
I think everybody's still trying to figure that out, because we go back to digital retailing, and the reality is people still want to touch, see, and smell the car. Very few people buy a house sight unseen. If a car is the second largest purchase, I have to tie that back to a real estate deal. And I feel like people are much more personalized to their vehicle, because most people actually probably spend more time in their car than they do their own home, other than sleep. So I think it's really important that we establish that the brick and mortar is still an important factor. I think much like leasing, does that have a place? Yes, I think it still needs refining. I think we'll watch and see how that happens. To stick our heads in the sand and to say, that's another fad is probably silly. But the flip side is when you see manufacturers out there. On my way here, I drove by a Tesla store. Okay, that's a brick and mortar. I'm not talking about a showroom. I'm talking about a dealership
I know.
with Tesla stacked outside. There's a few others that are now going back to the direct market and moving more towards the brick and mortar that are now going to emerge this year.
Yeah.
And I think you'll continue to see that. And the last thing is, look, last time I checked, brand new dealerships are still getting built all over the place.
That's right.
And they are not cheap.
That's right.
And the manufacturers are still pushing that. So
that's right.
I think there's still a massive amount of opportunity for people to go to the store and, much like shoes, try them on. You know, look, Zappos is great. Still a lot of shoe stores out there, and I think automotive is even more so that way.
Yeah. Before I let you go, and I appreciate all the time that you've given us here in the studio, what are one or two of the things that you're telling your dealer clients or dealers in general that listen to you, and you've been in the auto industry for quite some time, to really look out for in 2024? What do you want them to hone in on or keep their eye on to say this
process is number one.
Okay.
I think it's really important to re-examine your processes.
Okay.
And that's all the way through from, how are your people, how are they making that presentation, how is that experience, how is the phone call into the store, how is my website, send a lead into your own website, go shop your website as if you were a consumer.
Great advice.
Any of that stuff.
Right.
Like I think we get so honed into, it's there.
That's right.
I think we have to go experience that.
And
and your competition, shop theirs too.
That's right.
See what things that they're different.
They might have something that you like that you need on yours, or you might find out they suck on handling their website, and that gives you but to your point, and it's a great one for dealers, and you've heard me say this before, shop your own dealership online as if you're a consumer to see what your consumers are going through in your market, because you may be amazed at what you find. Right?
You will be amazed.
You will be amazed.
You will be amazed at what you find.
And then after that, by the way, after that, don't listen to the phone calls that come in the store. Because if you're having a bad day after the website, you're really going to have a bad day.
Very true. I think so. That's big. I think the second thing is, let's not reinvent the wheel. We do know how to run this business from a retail standpoint. So I think it's back to those basics and making sure, hey, pre-COVID, what did we focus on?
Right.
What did we look at in our marketing strategies?
Right.
How does that tune and change in today's market? How are we adjusting to, with the inventory we do have now? And how do we curtail that around, the lack of experience that we may find in our dealerships at that salesperson level? How do we make that experience better?
Right. Billy Wittenmyer, Billy the Kid, Chief Sales Officer at DealerOn. We're so pleased that you came into the studio.
Thank you for having me as always.
It's great to have you in, and you have a very unique perspective on what the automotive industry is up to and where it's headed and where it's been. So we really value what you got to share.
Thank you for having me. Likewise, appreciate everything you guys do.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.